Hello, everybody. So I am here today again with another guest that I had such a good time talking with last year that we actually just booked a separate call and like chatted a whole bunch separately. And we're going to do the same thing this time because he's just so great. Anyway, I am so stoked to have Jeremy Pope back on the show. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you. I am pretty excited to be here.
Yes, awesome. So, last time we talked about, you were at the time were running a company called the Closing Engine. You were building all of these high profile sales teams, all this stuff. We talked about your journey, your experience as a stage hypnotist, moving into sales.
Oh, right.
And yeah, oh yeah, we
Forgot
talked
about
about a
all
whole bunch
that.
of stuff.
Okay, wow. We sure
So,
did.
so today we were originally going to go deeper into, like sales, how to overhaul your sales approach, calls, etc.
Mhm.
But I really actually want to first hear a little bit more and dig a little bit more into your story, because actually, since we talked last year, you have totally shifted kind of what you're putting your energy into. And as I was saying, before we hit record and stuff, I think that this is really relevant and poignant for a lot of people right now who are having to make some hard calls around where their business is going and
Mhm.
whether that's, something that's going to fulfill them. So not to tease people too much, but would you be willing to share a little bit of kind of where you're at now and how you got there from last year?
Oh, yeah. It's been the most embarrassing year of my life. Yeah, for sure. So happy to share.
Thank you for being vulnerable.
uh, let's see. Well, the closing engine it, it became kind of a monster, and it was all my fault as the CEO. Um, there's a lot of people that you hear them say everyone else could see it but me. And I'm definitely not one of those people. For sure not. I don't have blind spots like that. And I did. I did.
Mm,
Um, it, I won't say that everybody else knew what the solution should have been,
mhm.
um, but they could certainly see the problem in a way that I wouldn't let myself see the problem. So you and Celine have a pretty amazing thing going at Anansi Content, and the team that you have between the two of you and that you create around you is just fantastic. Every time I look at that, it's just something pretty cool to emulate. And we had some parts really right at the closing engine. We had we had a culture that made people want to work with us, and that's the easy to keep part, because that's the part where people come back a year or two later and say, are you doing anything where we could work together? Because, well, they know you and you know them, and it's people, not pieces. I don't really know how to say that, but you know what I mean. That's
Yeah,
more
I
of an
think you said
intuitive
it
thing. But
perfectly.
knowing people.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Patrick Lencioni said this in the Three Signs of a Miserable Job. He said that if someone can't tell how they matter to the people around them in their work,
Mhm.
that's one of the signs. If they're anonymous, especially to their manager, that's another big sign that the job is miserable. And
Mhm.
if they can't measure if they're doing a good job or not, then that's all you need for a miserable job, regardless of how much money you're making in that job. And so we were not anonymous, that's for sure. And we definitely could tell how we mattered to each other. The immeasurability part, that was hard. That we never
Mhm.
really got some of that down. But having the culture that people enjoyed working together, that was a really big deal. Now, the parts that we got wrong, I never got a Celine of my own. I never got a good
Mhm.
COO. Um, I tried 4 or 5 different people in that spot, and a couple of people that told me I'm not it. I'll fill in for a little while. So nothing against them, and they and I knew beforehand,
Mhm.
uh, but it never came together. And so I counted it up toward the end. Um, I was trying to do 6 different jobs inside that business: the sales manager, the CEO, the COO, um, the IT manager. I can't count to 6. So anyway, but it was 6 on paper.
Yeah.
And this is not a humble brag. Like, okay, I was doing okay at all of them. No, I was failing at all of them. And that was a significant wake up call for me, just realizing, okay, there's no way to continue this. And I finally had a friend who's a good coach for me. He's a good thinker for me. And he said, Jeremy, you've hit an iceberg. How long are you going to ask people to stay on the ship before they're allowed to abandon ship? I said,
Mm.
oh no, that's really what's happening here. Um, it was a fascinating thing, and the hardest decision of my life for sure. And I mean, first world problems, right? But it was I it was a very humbling experience, and it was a good growth for me, coming out of a bad thing. So I learned a tremendous amount, and then I went to work for other people as a consultant, and went to work for them as like a fractional COO,
Mhm.
and be the COO you want to see in the world. So that was pretty. That was enlightening,
Mhm.
because for anyone who's read the Rocket Fuel book by Gino Wickman, the traction EOS people, I
Mhm.
score a 94 on the visionary and a 42 on the integrator. And I imagine that's different now, months later. But
Mhm.
um, I could do the integrator. I could do it. And that was a shock to me. Uh,
Mm.
but it worked. It had to work within a framework, but it did work out. So that was interesting, but it further cemented, like, one person, one job. And that was always an issue that we had at the Closing Engine, was scope creep in jobs.
Mm.
And I recognized that, I guess, about halfway through the arc, and started addressing that with other people, and refusing to um, let them take on things that were just not a good fit for the existing role that they were covering, or their personality, and etc. But that
Mhm.
was a hard thing to learn, because when someone's enthusiastic and they look like a unicorn, the tendency is to take advantage of that, to say, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so toward the end, I was about the only person who was still trying to cover multiple roles there. Um,
But it sounds like there was a lot of pressure on you to cover those roles at that point.
it was a destructive amount of pressure. Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it was certainly not healthy. I was not sleeping well at all.
Mm.
And yeah, I could feel, I mean, the acid reflux was getting pretty bad there. So, I mean, all the little things, they start to add up pretty quickly. So
Absolutely.
now, just staying in a place where I'm comfortable,
Mhm.
and learning the boundaries of what I will allow myself to do. Boy, that's hard,
Mm.
but
Oh gosh. Yeah.
that's
I'm
where I am.
working on that myself.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have a feeling we'll be working on it for a long time.
Totally, totally. And I just want to call attention to something that you said where you kind of joked and you're like, well, first world problems or whatever. But I think that and hopefully this isn't too soapboxy, because I don't want to take the
Go
mic away
for it.
from you here. But I think that the plight of the entrepreneur is really devalued in our society,
Oh, I know I
where
devalued it. Absolutely.
like we as like I know even myself before I was an entrepreneur, although realistically I was secretly an entrepreneur and I just didn't know it. We have this idea that like business owners, uh I don't know. I know that my idea was it was really polarized. It was either like they were these like all powerful people who were
Mm,
manipulating and like ruining society, or they were these impoverished people who kind of couldn't quite get it right.
that's
And
a good point.
Yeah, you know, and what I've come to realize, and this was helped partially by the book, and I forget who wrote it, but it's called Anti-Fragile. And I haven't read the whole
Nic-
thing,
Nicholas
but
Nassim Taleb.
pardon me?
Nicholas Nassim Taleb.
Yes, who also
Mhm.
wrote The Black Swan.
Mhm.
And one of the things he points out early on in the book is that as entrepreneurs, we really carry innovation and risk on our shoulders, and it's our failures, not our successes, but our failures again and again and again, that allow society to problem solve in creative ways and grow, and us to support each other, because
Yeah.
99% plus of the entrepreneurial world is people like you and me. It's not those ultra huge corporations.
Hmm.
And the decisions that I promise this is relevant. The decisions that
Oh,
you
yeah.
had to make in terms weren't just decisions affecting you. It's not just, you know, can I do it? Can I carry these people? Can I carry this company? It's people's
Mhm.
livelihoods, especially if people are enjoying working with you. You're not just making
Right.
a decision for yourself, you're making a decision for these other people whose contexts, whose livelihoods to some degree you hold in your hands, not to mention all of the clients that you've been helping and serving. And it sounds like potentially going above and beyond for, even at a detriment to the people on your team, you know, if people are kind of consistently taking on things that aren't their job roles. And yes, those might be kind of the problems of privilege to some degree, and it's good to acknowledge that, but those are also big problems. Even if you discount, which I don't want to, your own well-being as a human
Mm.
being. It's like the
Yeah.
well-being that you're
Yeah.
valuing for these other people. It's almost like you forget to value yourself in that mix and be like, you know, if I'm suffering, that's enough reason to make a change. Just all on its own, you know?
That's
Yeah.
interesting. There's, I think part of what I was doing was identifying myself, and this is pretty common. I'm not
Yeah.
special in this regard. The, the the identity of self with the business,
Yes.
that the conflation there is, uh, if the business begins to fail, I am a failure kind of language
Yes.
starts to get thrown around inside my head pretty
Yeah.
easily. So I have to be careful about that. And the and then once you reach a certain tipping point and fulfillment starts to suffer as well, and everyone's unhappy and just kind of slogging through and soldiering on, and that's the best part of it. It's like, oh my goodness, there's there's nothing else to do here.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting that I've kind of come to that from a different direction, but come to a similar conclusion, just realizing there's no such thing as someone that has an easy life. I just don't
Yeah.
believe in an easy life anymore.
Mm.
Privilege, sure, but
Yeah.
ease, no. If you don't have external struggle to work through, then you've got internal struggle to match. And
Yeah.
there's no way around um, pain in life to some extent, and
Mm.
there's no way around very hard work. You're going to do it one way or another, either to cope or to grow. And
Yeah.
so
Well said. Yeah.
there's just some of that into every life a little rain must fall. I mean, let's reduce it down to as platitudey stuff as possible, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, no mud, no lotus is what my partner says
there we go. I like that.
quite often.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, you know, if again, and I'm just so grateful that you're willing to share and be vulnerable, because I also think there's a lot of pressure as an
My pleasure.
entrepreneur to look like you're succeeding and thriving all of the time.
Oh yeah, I can
Um,
feel that even right now. Sure,
oh yeah,
sure.
I'm,
Yep.
yeah. You know, and I'll be, and I'll just be candid in that even as someone who, you know, appears to have it all together on our end in terms of operations and team and stuff, like I have been really struggling since Celine went on mat leave.
Mm.
And despite the fact that I'm not wearing 6 hats, just kind of realizing, and we had months to prepare and all of this different type of stuff. And I've still, you know, suffered and struggled and wondered. It's been about 3 weeks, just for context for people.
Yep.
And she's coming back. She's just on mat leave. She's
Yep,
even still
exactly.
participating a little bit.
Uh-huh.
But just what you said about equating the business success with my success as a human being,
Yeah.
where it's like, well, if I'm struggling to get everything done, or if we haven't met our sales targets or something, like
Mhm.
that just downloads directly to my brain in terms of, well, I
Yeah.
am not just, as you said, I have failed, but I am a failure, which is so
Right.
much more dangerous because it's so easy to forget all the things that you have built and
Right.
succeeded in and thrived in. Um,
Or the things that are going right now.
right
And there's
now,
two
yeah.
things going wrong and seven things going right, but
Mm.
I am a failure. Come on, everybody.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I feel so, even as I'm talking about this and like rawing, I feel so called out, even in myself, where I'm like, oh my God, I'm pretty sure I thought I was a failure at least once, even today or something, you know, it's just,
Nice.
so
Nice.
pervasive. Yeah. So just to continue on, so you know, you're at this place where you've come to realize that even though you've made things good for your team and no one's kind of overworking, you
Mhm.
yourself are in the hole, you're buried, you're wearing too many hats, and at this point you're not sure there's a way out. So just, you know, just totally real talk here. What was that point for you at which you decided to go in a totally different direction and let go of the closing engine rather than, you know, like doubling down or hiring new people or etc.? Like, was
Oh,
there?
yeah, it was that phone call where that friend slapped
Yeah.
me around.
Okay. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was basically him saying, there is no way to fix this.
Mm.
You need additional skill sets and people inside right now, already onboarded into the culture.
And you're already too
You
far
don't,
gone.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 There's no way to create more runway at this point, culture
Mm.
runway or ops runway. It was
Yeah.
the the COO position, really.
Mm.
That was the
Yeah.
crux
That
of it.
was the
And I
linchpin.
had just I had just let go the last person to try
Be in
to
that
do
role.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
position.
To try.
And it was just kind of the final straw.
Mm.
And I'm so glad that he was there because I might have tried to keep going beyond that if he hadn't
Mm.
been very direct with me.
Yeah.
So I was very and am very grateful for that.
Yeah. And
And
from
so
there, and you know,
that week I shut everything down and let
okay.
everybody know, and
Okay. Yeah.
started legally winding it up and all that kind of thing.
Wow. So basically, what I'm hearing, and sorry if this is kind of digging in a painful place for you,
No,
is
it's
that
fine.
once you made that call, that was kind of the hardest part for you, was
Oh
hearing
yeah,
it and making that call, and then it was like, okay, now we're just going to do what we need to do and have the conversations and do the
yeah,
logistics and etc.
yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that everything else became easy,
Yeah.
but the stress was mostly gone from it,
Mm.
or the unhealthy levels of stress,
Yeah.
uh, the strain, I guess. The guy who invented the word stress in the way we use it today, he later regretted that. A lot of people don't
Interesting.
realize that, but he said, I wish I'd called it strain instead. So he later said, stress is good, strain is bad. And I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, I like
Yeah.
that differentiation. Some people call it eustress and distress, good stress and bad
Okay.
stress.
Yes, I have heard those terms before,
Yeah.
and I feel like part of my life's journey is untangling those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the power of full engagement and stress for success by Tony Schwartz and Jim Lair, or Jim Schwartz and Tony Lair. I think it's Tony Schwartz and Jim Lair.
Okay.
Those two books go deep into that. And then the Anders Ericsson, the flow guy that everybody quotes, and Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, all that kind of research. It ties together very closely.
Excellent. I will probably be digging deeper into those.
Oh, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's such a rabbit hole, and then you bring trauma into it, and it's just like explosion of can of worms.
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, and again, thank you for sharing here. So I now but you haven't just been you know twiddling your thumbs since then, and since you made that decision. So I'm curious. I have two things. Not just kind of what are you doing now,
Mhm.
but what was that journey to rebuilding kind of mental and emotional stability like for you? Was it that once the strain, as you put it, was gone, you were able to kind of
Ah,
bounce back quickly? Did you have to kind of do some additional stuff to help you kind of uh, realign? What did that look like for you?
I haven't thought about it in those terms before. So I apologize for not having a concise answer here. You're going to have to hear me think out loud a little bit.
Oh,
Okay.
goody. That's literally what I wanted. So,
Um, I I bounced back quickly enough that I was afraid I was missing something important.
Mm,
I was afraid that I was missing lessons because I was so ready to move on from then. And
okay.
so I was really careful to do postmortems and to approach several different people I trusted and make sure that I'm seeing everything that should be seen there, and even feeling everything that should be felt, and
Because
allowing
it felt
myself.
like surprisingly like a relief. Is that what I'm hearing?
It was. I was
Yeah.
like the lack of a grieving process,
Mm,
um, because closing down a business, that's
it's big.
yeah, it's big. Uh, so I mean, there's a story in the Bible about King David, um, about how what is the story? He counted everybody. He did a census, especially
Mhm.
of the military stuff. And God's no, that's a different story. Nope. um, so this was when he committed adultery with Bathsheba and
Mhm,
had Solomon, or the child before Solomon.
mhm,
And there was a prophet that came to him. Nathan the prophet came to him and said, "This child is not going to live."
mhm,
And he grieved and prayed and cried and uh, just was in self-destruction, sacrifice mode until he got word that the child had died. And
mhm,
then he got up and took a shower and went on with life. And they were like, wait, now you're happy? And
mhm,
he was like, well, nothing to be done now.
mhm,
And that was kind of the way I felt. I guess I'd already done my grieving before
mhm,
that.
mhm.
So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing something very important in the lessons. And it's fine to make mistakes. It's not okay to not learn from your mistakes and to make those
Mm,
mistakes again. So um, just making sure that everything is right now.
yeah,
Uh, that became the focus, and uh, making sure that the value that I can provide comes from a place that I'm not going to overstretch myself. Overcommitment was the consistent theme there,
yeah.
and I'm still struggling not to overcommit, or well, I'm growing in my ability to only commit properly. There we go. How's
Yeah,
that?
nice catch there. I resonate with that as well. I'm also growing in my capacity to
It's a
not
muscle.
overcommit. Yeah.
Boundaries is a muscle.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I came close to a place of just wanting. To be honest, I've had a few moments even where
Mhm.
I just wanting to
Mhm.
kind of burn it all down and so to speak and walk away
I
because it
think
can be
most people do at
overwhelming.
some point. Yeah.
Yeah, and even with doing the work to like delegate and et cetera, and having the people and all that stuff, it's still so hard
Mhm.
not to overcommit. Yeah,
Right.
it's just yeah. Anyway, I realized I
Especially when
was on.
all this world is
Yeah.
so interesting.
Oh yes, there's just yeah,
Everything's
lots.
interesting.
Yes, lots
Hey,
of
hey,
interesting stuff to
hey,
navigate.
what do you think about SaaS?
About SaaS? What do you mean?
SaaS, software as a service.
Oh,
Wouldn't it be
software as a
interesting
service.
to go into business around SaaS?
Oh,
Of course it
of
would.
course.
Are we
Yeah.
gonna? No.
No, no. I feel like I've had to like limit to things that I find like fun and like interesting.
Yeah.
And then I've had the realization that that's still way too big. Like, no, like I
Yeah,
have to limit way further to what seems fun or interesting because even that
exactly.
world is just way too big and way too open to overcommitment.
I read Jim Collins' Good to Great in
Okay.
that time, and he talks about a lot of things, but the hedgehog principle was useful to me during that. The the Venn diagram with the three pieces. A lot of people talk about this similarly in terms of careers, but
Mm.
he talks about it in what's a really good profit center for your company. Um, what do you really enjoy doing, and what can you be the best or second best in the world at? And there were only
Yeah.
11 companies profiled as the good to great companies. Nobody else made the cut. So it's a really high bar there for that first or second best in the world.
Mm.
But that was really interesting to me because there are very few things that I can be really good at. And it turns out that connecting the pieces, that's my thing. So
Mm.
I've been able to focus on that.
Excellent, excellent. And this really brings us full circle as I realized I got so deep into it right off the bat that I didn't even ask the first two questions that I usually ask.
Oh, okay.
But I think that kind of ending us off with them will be really powerful, and we'll kind of lean into our other
Mhm.
lightning round questions. So, you mentioned that putting the pieces together is really
Mhm.
where you found that you excel. And I know that now you are, as you said, a hands dirty consultant who's able to do what you do and love it. So, what would you say your
Yeah.
superpower is these days?
Oh, that's it. It takes a lot of different
Yeah.
forms. Like
Yeah.
our biggest, the biggest thing that I'm promoting right now, is this a good time to mention that?
Mhm, mhm. Go for
Is
it. Yeah.
sales call overhaul.
Yeah.
And so that is putting the pieces together of what a zero pressure sales call ought to look like and the 9
Mm,
dimensions of that. And we do a 3 call review and show people what pieces are you missing, just straight up missing in your sales calls, which pieces are you not going deep enough in. So that's one aspect of it, and that's
mhm.
salescalloverhaul.com. Ta-da! But the other pieces of that, I'm putting partnerships together with people that should meet each other, and just
Mm,
they don't see that they're missing something, and I'm just being a mirror going, oh, there's a little more over there, oh, look in that direction. Like everything's there in the room or in the room next door, and all you have to do is be able to see that. And so just pointing the mirror, um, it's super fun. But putting people together with people, I'm doing a lot of recruiting in the engine room. I'm putting ideas with people, putting software together in ways that people haven't thought to use it before, like
mm,
using Zoom for delegation in uh, in ways that you don't have to have your assistant listen to the entire call. Yeah,
mhm,
here's a tip. Use If you use Otter for transcription,
mhm.
then just use the words action item. And that way your assistant can just listen. They can search the transcript for those 2 words and then listen to the next minute or so. And there's the tasks to pull out and delegate to the rest of the team. But
Ooh, I
so
love
many
it.
people, that would fit in their workflows, they just didn't ever realize it was possible. Everybody has Zoom, everybody has Otter, everybody has Google Drive, everybody has Zapier. None of the clients that I put that together for have needed any new software. It's been so
Mm,
interesting to find that. So just seeing the pieces that need to connect, that's really that's the superpower.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. I think that this is so powerful as well because like the thing that I'm hearing again and again and again, like the gold nugget in your journey with the company and also in your journey here is that what you need is often right in front of you. Like you've been
Oh
able
yeah.
now to bounce back in terms of energy, in terms of profitability, in terms of a service model that actually you didn't have to go off and learn something new to do it. You didn't have to
Oh, right,
recreate something from scratch. You're
right.
able to leverage the resources and tools that you already have and put the pieces together in a new way that allows you to deliver value in a much, much, much more sustainable way, is what it's sounding like to me.
Way more sustainable. And
Yeah.
I am always growing the network. Like the Rolodex, that is the important thing now. That the Rolodex is everything.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm nearly 40. So would your viewers and your listeners know what a Rolodex is? The
Oh God,
database.
I hope so, or I'm
Okay.
old too.
Okay. The database, the
Mhm.
people you know, your network is your net worth, stuff like that.
Mhm.
If I don't know the answer to something, then I can Facebook message someone and find out the answer many times within minutes and have a solution in place that saves thousands of dollars a year just from one connection. And just
Yeah.
knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to interface people with other people is a skill set that I believe I'll be learning for the rest of my life. It's
Mm.
fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting you bring this up because this has not only been my experience as I grow, and I'm still kind of leaning on the team and stuff, but also as time goes on. And it's funny because I mentioned this in the last interview that I did as well. This came up, is that the more I experience as an entrepreneur and the more I gain expertise, I've really found that the capacity to manage people resources, so to speak, to manage resources in general, but to understand, where this connection will help, how these connections can help each other, that managing the Rolodex, as you put it, has become not just one of the most powerful and relevant things that I've noticed as well, but also one of the most fulfilling and
Yes,
satisfying
it's
things.
very rewarding.
It's humans with humans, and it's
Yeah,
win-win. You're genuinely and authentically wanting to create win-win situations with cool
right.
humans. And
Hmm.
that feels really powerful and awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Awesome. Well,
been tremendous fun.
yes. I'm gonna wrap us up there. Honestly, this has been, I'm glad that we decided to go in this direction.
Me too.
Probably will invite you back on to talk about all the things that I was
I'm
originally
always
going to
down
ask
for it.
you. Basically picking your sales brain in terms of expertise and sales calls and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy we went in this direction because this is, we've talked about this with regards to sales as well, but this is the unsexy side of being a leader.
Oh,
Is
so
having to
unsexy.
make these decisions, having to make these hard calls, having to be self-aware, even when it's freaking painful and it sucks. And I think that the world really does need a lot more of this. So thank you so much, Jeremy, for being just so vulnerable and real and authentic here. Before we do let you go and share with the audience anything you might have for them, are there any last words of wisdom that you want someone listening to walk away with right
Oh
now?
goodness. Learn from other people's mistakes. Don't insist on making your own mistakes all the time. We all have to make some of our own mistakes, but goodness gracious, learn from other people.
Mm. Really, really
Again,
wise words.
not sexy, not
No.
sexy. It's as boring as anything you could hear, but that's, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I can't back
And
that
be
up enough. It's so
vulnerable.
true.
If
Yeah,
you're not vulnerable, you won't be able to learn. And if you're not vulnerable with other people, they won't be vulnerable with you.
yeah.
So that vulnerability creates the right kind of relationships. If you want relationships rather than poker opponents constantly, if you
Mm,
feel like you're in a lot of adversarial relationships, go vulnerable and
yeah,
it will start making a difference
yeah.
within seconds.
Seconds. Yeah,
I'm
because
not
it
talking
almost
about minutes or
instantly.
days. It is
Yeah,
immediate.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It really, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to talk over you, but I so agree. I just want to be there like rah, rah, rah with everything. Yeah, I found that vulnerability can instantly shift the dynamic from us versus each other to us versus the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just so
My clients, my employees, my vendor partners, they have been so gracious with me. I am so grateful to them as we shut things down and as we, uh, I mean, as I'm rebuilding, it's been, I've been shocked and amazed and so grateful that they've they've done that with me and they were gracious. It
wonderful.
made all the difference in the world to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say from the flip side of things is that if you have a team, like if I'm being totally candid, I had kind of a stress breakdown a week or two ago,
Oh
and
no.
had to be very vulnerable. I didn't
Uh,
have to be, but I chose to be very
yeah.
vulnerable with the
Yeah.
team. And not only did they strong arm me into taking some mental health time off,
Yeah.
but they've just made everything so much
They
better,
stepped
and
up,
they've been
didn't
so
they?
gracious, again, as you
Yeah.
said, like gracious and supportive. And as a leader, I find I can be vulnerable with people, but it's especially hard to be vulnerable with my team because I think I'm supposed to
Yep.
be that big shining force.
Yeah.
And it was so powerful. You can't get support unless you're willing to acknowledge that you have a problem. So
Yeah.
yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy. I'm just so grateful for this
It's my
talk.
pleasure.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. And to all of our listeners who are tuning in, as always, I just hope that you have a really excellent rest of your day.